Well, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Ritter has been through it, and now it appears that he is being attacked again. If you have not heard this news, welcome and thank you for joining me. This is crazy. This is wild. But Scott Ritter's home was raided by the FBI. I want to give a big shout out here to Hotspot for posting this video here on X. We're going to talk about the raid. We're going to talk a little bit about Scott Ritter's response. And then I also want to show you some of the events that led up to this raid, some of the things that were happening before this raid took place. For those who are not aware, Scott Ritter, he's been on the show before. He's been on a number of shows. He was a former, weapons inspector. He's an author. He's a journalist. He's an activist, an avid supporter for someone like Julian Assange. And he has been targeted enormously multiple times by whether it's the FBI or other alphabet letter agencies, because he is telling the truth about foreign policy and the U.S. government's role in it. So I want to start with the raid here. Again, Hotspot posted this video on X here. And as you can see, I will play the video. So you can see here, obviously not just going through the home, but also the vehicles outside of the home. Going through both cars there. Very damning, ladies and gentlemen, very damning. So yes, again, the FBI there raiding Scott Ritter's home. It seems like he cannot catch a break. Now, what is very odd about this is that there were a certain number of events that took place before this raid happened. One of them was a book launch. So Scott Ritter actually just launched another book. I want to show that tweet here from Randy Credico. Randy, also a very avid Assange supporter. Here is Scott Ritter at his book launch shindig on Sunday. Speakers at the event were Ritter, Danny Haifong, Dan Kovalik, me, himself, Margaret Kimberly, Dimitri. So there's diplomat Dimitri there as well, and Garland Nixon. Scott's home was raided by the FBI today in order to shut him up. So look at this. So you can see here, obviously, comrades that I think you guys are familiar with, right? So there's Danny Haifong, also talks a lot about foreign policy, knows Scott very well. There's Dan Kovalik. There's Scott right there in the beige blazer. There is Randy Credico with the microphone. There's the wonderful Miss Margaret Kimberly from Black Agenda Report, which we adore so well. There's Dimitri, and there is Garland Nixon. So again, it's, this was a big deal for Scott. It's a book launch. And yeah, I have some questions, fam, because I find it very strange that this FBI raid happens after this book launch. Remember, we covered before, and Scott Ritter came on the show to talk about how he was taken off of the plane when he was on his way to Russia to attend the St. Petersburg conference, and they pulled him off of the plane. So he never even made it to Russia, and they confiscated his passport. And I did ask him, did they have a warrant? And he said, no, but they had guns. So there's that. So a number of things that have been happening here. And I think we all know they are trying to silence Scott Ritter. So this is a form of intimidation. Another thing happened before this raid, and that was Scott Ritter met with RFK, and there's a lot of criticism about this interaction here that he had with RFK. He said burgers with Bobby. Again, I wasn't there. You weren't there. We don't know what he talked to RFK about. Who knows? Maybe he was trying to, push him a little bit or help him change his position on Israel and get him to understand some things about Palestinian people. I don't know. We don't know what the conversation was about. However, we do know that RFK Jr. Has been notorious for calling out the CIA and the FBI. We know how he feels about these alphabet letter agencies, and he is a presidential candidate that was refused Secret Service from the Biden administration. It is really interesting how all of this is playing out. So it's just odd, and it could just be a coincidence, but I find it very weird that all of this happened prior to the FBI raid there. And again, if you look at some of the comments here, you'll see people are very upset. They were upset about this interaction. Ask him if IDF can, assault prisoners. That's coming from Ryan. And Scott said, why don't you ask him? Do better, Ryan. If you follow me at all, you know where I stand on Israel. You know I am opposed to RFK Jr.'s position on Israel. You also know that I view the deterioration of the U.S.-Russia relations and threat of nuclear war to be most existentially important issue of this election. And RFK Jr. has been a rare voice of reason in this regard. And as such, RFK Jr. is someone worth meeting to discuss this issue. I will continue to hold Israel accountable for its genocidal actions, and I will continue to try and stop a nuclear conflict between Russia and the U.S. I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I wish others would do the same. Yeah, so people saw this, and I think people thought, oh my God, please tell me he's not getting on board or trying to, take in this guy's stuff. Some people worried maybe RFK is trying to get him to change his position on Israel, which I don't think can be done for someone like Scott, someone who knows a lot about foreign policy and what the U.S. government has done. Now, Scott Ritter did respond to the raid. First, there was a response to the media. So I want to show that response first, and then we'll get into a couple others. This is from Che Bose. It says Scott Ritter explains why he knows what he knows about the FBI raid on his home. So let's get into this here.
At my residence, the search warrant is related to concerns apparently the U.S. government has about violations of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. I will tell you right now, I am not in violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. I have not done anything that would do it, and hopefully by executing the search warrant and taking the materials that they did, they will.
Let me pause here for a second. So what he said is that, let's make sure the volume's all up. What he said here is that they are saying that he's in violation of the U.S. Foreign Relations Act, which is, it's so, this... Our country is so hypocritical because we can stand with Israel, which is literally another entity, is not the United States. I said this before, that AIPAC should have to register as a foreign agent. So it's okay to do that, but it's not okay for Scott Ritter to do journalism. It's not okay for Scott Ritter to write a book about foreign relations. It's not okay for Scott Ritter to give speeches about this as well. So the country is completely hypocritical, and it's very clear what this is really about. He has been heavily critical about Israel. He's been heavily critical about Ukraine and, of course, the money laundering for Ukraine. He has been very critical about the U.S. government knowing that Ukraine could not win this war, that this is just another reason to try to harm Russia economically, which it's not doing. The sanctions that they've implemented on Russia is not hurting their economy at all. So again, this is another attempt for them to try to silence him. So let's continue here. Go back just a little bit here.
Search warrant and taking the materials that they did, they will rapidly reach that conclusion. I will say that things like this have a chilling effect on free speech. There's no doubt that I'm being targeted because of statements I've made about U.S. policy in Ukraine. I'm being targeted because I have made an effort to try and improve relations between the United States and Russia, to try to bring about arms control, to bring about peace. Apparently somebody in the U.S. government takes umbrage at this, so they executed a search warrant. The FBI was extraordinarily professional. I have no complaints against the personnel that did this.
Pause for a second. I just want to chime in and say, and of course, he is not the only person that has been vocal about Ukraine or Israel. But I think the difference with Scott Ritter is, again, this is someone that was a former weapons inspector. This is someone that was a former Marine. So they kind of look at you as a traitor, right? They kind of, these people who have been whistleblowers that have come forward, whether it's with the EPA, whether it's with the Marines, et cetera, whether it's with the CIA, whatever, these people, the government will look at as a traitor, and they will heavily target them, especially when they're speaking out against foreign policy. But yes, this does have a chilling effect on free speech. And this is what I've been trying to warn people about for quite some time. You have the right to disagree with what people say, but where I don't think you have the right is to tell them that they cannot say it. And we are in a dangerous time in this country where we are seeing more and more of our speech be suppressed or removed. We've seen multiple people be deplatformed over the years. Like, this is a very scary time. And as I said before, you don't have to agree with what Scott Ritter says, but he still has the right to say it.
I do have complaints against the personnel that caused this to happen. This has a chilling impact on free speech. The idea that you have a free speech right in America when you execute it in a manner that the U.S. government takes exception to, and they launch a search warrant, that is an intimidation factor. I can say that I am not intimidated, and I will continue to speak out, and I will continue to do what I do, because that's my responsibility as an American citizen, and I will continue to operate in that manner. So I think I gave you all the answers you need at this point in time. I would request that you respect that and let me and my wife get on with our business.
What time did they show up today?
I don't know. They were here a long time. So, you know.
Can you say generally what type of stuff was in the boxes they took?
The search warrant allowed them to look for electronic equipment. They were clearly interested in communications that I'd had with people related to the work I do.
So they were taking electronic equipment because they basically want to go through whether it's email or hard drive to see who he has been in contact with. I don't think they're looking to see if he's contacted people in the U.S. I think they're looking to see conversations that he's had with people in Russia, right? Like, that's what they're really looking for there.
That's all I can say about it. It's up to them to review it. I have nothing to hide. I was cooperative with them, and you know, it is what it is, and we'll get on with it. But as I said, I respect their right to do what they did. I'm not in violation of the law, and I will not be intimidated. So anybody upstairs who thought that this will intimidate me and cause me to stop speaking out, they guessed wrong. Have a great day.
Passport from you?
Yeah. So that's what it is. They want him to stop speaking. So they'll do things like this. Let's raid your home. I want to remind you of the Huru movement, the African Socialist Party. I've interviewed Amali Yeshitela on the show multiple times. He's also been on RBN network. And Amali Yeshitela went through this same issue where the FBI, they raided the Huru movement facility in Florida. They are now, I believe that case is supposed to resume trial in September in Tampa, Florida. They are accusing Black socialists of being these Russian assets, etc. They're not Russian assets. You know, they're trying to stop anybody who's telling the truth about Russia, who's telling the truth about Ukraine, who's telling the truth about the military industrial complex. These are the people that they're trying to silence. And the Huru movement, you know, has done great work within the community. They're feeding people, they're clothing people. It's not just mutual aid. Like, they have a reparations center in the St. Louis location. So I think, you know, again, we have to push back on this. Again, you do not have to agree with what Scott Ritter says, but where you should agree is that people should have the right to free speech. And we really don't have the right to free speech the way that we think we do in this country.
They took that's an old story, but yeah, my passport was seized when I returned from Russia back in June, when I was getting ready to leave for Russia back in June.
When you say they took stuff that was related to your work, what work exactly?
I'm a writer. You figure it out. You're a journalist. Imagine if they did a search warrant in your workplace. What would they take? 2 + 2 = 4.
Right. So they're asking him, like, you know, what would they have taken? You know, obviously, again, he's an author. He's written books. So they want to get that information. Now, Scott Ritter also gave another statement about this as well last night. We're going to give a shout out here to Jeff Norman. Statement from Scott Ritter about today's FBI harassment. And he was saying to join them live on X. I want you to hear this part here. We just need to replace Scott's computer because the scoundrels confiscated it and his phone. So again, that's them trying to prevent Scott Ritter from being able to speak. Let's get into this here.
Hello, as everybody's probably figured out by now, the FBI has executed a search warrant on my home. The search warrant was based upon what they deemed to be probable cause that I am in violation of the Foreign Agent Registrations Act. And they executed a search warrant looking for electronic devices, my computers, my cell phone.
Registrations Act, correction. I think I said Foreign Relations Act, Foreign Registration Act.
Things of that nature. Based upon their questions, it appears that they are primarily concerned about my relationship with RT and Sputnik. More specifically, that I am receiving direction from RT and Sputnik, and I'm being compensated for this. And that means that I am working on behalf of the Russian government.
So I just want to give an update here about RT. Remember, about over a year and a half ago, there were a number of journalists that were deplatformed because they were RT commentators. Lee Camp, Abby Martin, Chris Hedges had a show on RT. Jesse Ventura had a show on RT. Terrell Ventura, like there were a number of them that had those shows. Anya Parampil was on RT. So RT stands for Russian television. And the thing is they're trying to use that as to, point to Scott Ritter and say, well, you worked for RT, so therefore you're working on behalf of the Russian government. I mean, it's a media job. It's a journalism job, right? And obviously people are going to get paid for their work, but they'll try to do things like that.
I let them know in no uncertain terms that is absolutely not what's happening, that any compensation I get from RT and Sputnik is the same as I get from any journalistic entity that I provide articles or video products for. I am a journalist, and I get compensated for my work. We shall see where it goes. They were in my house for 5.5 hours. Very professional, very courteous. I have no problems with the people who executed the search warrant. I do have a problem with the search warrant itself. Let's just be very clear. No crime has been committed. I am not a foreign agent. I am not in violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and they know this. This was an act of intimidation by the U.S. government designed to have a chilling effect. I was accused of that my articles were designed to manipulate the opinion of the American people on behalf of the Russian government, that my podcasts do the same thing. Ask the Inspectors, apparently a Russian propaganda tool designed to, again, manipulate the thinking of the American people.
And I will just say this again, this is anything that goes against the State Department narrative. So if you heavily criticize Ukraine and Zelensky, they'll kind of look at you with a side eye. They're more likely to come after someone like Scott Ritter because, again, he was a weapons inspector and he was a Marine, that type of thing. So I think that it's very telling what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to remind everyone, it doesn't matter if we have a Republican or a Democrat president. This type of behavior has happened under both parties, where they're attacking and targeting people like Scott Ritter that are telling you the truth. And I've told you guys before, Russia is not your enemy. China is not your enemy. If you actually visit these countries, you talk to people that have lived in these countries that are American, they will give you a very different perspective than what you're hearing from the State Department corporate media. That's what I call it, because that's what it is.
This is absurd in the extreme. This raid on my home was designed to have a chilling effect, to make me think twice about speaking out, about writing, about doing podcasts. And as I told the FBI, and I'll tell you now, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that I'll back down, because I'm doing nothing wrong. I'm doing what every concerned American should be doing when they believe that their government is behaving in a manner that doesn't conform with the values and principles that are set forth by the Founding Fathers in the Constitution of the United States of America. I am an American citizen holding my government accountable and exercising the rights given to me by the Constitution. Today, the United States government declared war on me. They declared war on my ability to write, my ability to speak, my ability to interact with the American people, and indeed with a broader international audience. So be it. We're at war. It's not a war I plan on losing, and I can tell you that there is no chilling effect. Look forward to seeing me in the future as soon as I get the ability to interact more efficiently. But thank everybody for their concern, and I'll see you Friday night on Ask the Inspector.
Yeah, and that's the way that you should respond to that. Scott Ritter is not going to allow them to silence him or to stop him from talking about these issues. And that's really the position that you need to have, because that's what they want to do. They want to scare you. First, they confiscate the passport, take him off the plane. Now the FBI is raiding his home. I mean, it was just in July that the passport was confiscated and he was dragged off the plane. And now it is August and they're already, I believe that was July, early July or late June, and now they're raiding his home. So when these types of events happen back to back, you know, this close together, it's obvious that they're trying to intimidate him. They're trying to get him to stop telling the truth about the foreign affairs that we have in the world. And it's very sad. And I would encourage all of you to stand up for free speech. I would encourage all of you to stand against censorship, whether you agree with the issue or not. I am very concerned about where we are headed in this country. I am very concerned.